Week 14 of the fantasy football season, and here's the top 15 tight ends I'm ranking this week. Number one, Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Travis Kelce this season definitely not putting up the huge elite numbers like we're used to seeing week in and week out from him. And obviously he's losing a step a little bit, 34 years old. Couple leg injuries on and off this season for Travis Kelce. But this week in a big game versus the Buffalo Bills, I think Travis Kelce rises to the occasion. And this is a big game for the Kansas City Chiefs, especially usually when they come off a loss, they go into the next game and have a big performance. So this week, I expect nothing less in a monster game from Travis Kelce. Number two, TJ Hockenson of the Minnesota Vikings. So TJ Hockenson, it's been a great season for him, and he's right now threatening for that number one spot going into next season as the number one tight end in fantasy football. So it doesn't matter if it was Kirk Cousins early in the season or now Joshua Dobbs at the quarterback position. Hawkinson's a matchup nightmare in the middle of the field. He gets open. If the catch ability is great as well, and he's got a nose for the end zone. So this week in a matchup at the Vegas Raiders, where we know their defense is mid at best, and you could put points on the board, and it's an indoor game, which is always a plus. I think TJ Hockenson once again puts on a great performance, and he's definitely one of the top tight ends, if top tight end, when it's all said and done this season. The next tight end, Sam Laporta of the Detroit Lions. So Sam Laporta is taking the league by storm at the tight end position, and as a rookie to come in and just put up monster numbers. So the Lions obviously trading Hockenson to the Vikings last trade deadline, and now Sam Laporta drafting in the NFL draft, and this kid, he's putting up huge numbers, and him and Jared Goff really have a great rapport. So last week, Sam Laporta had a monster game, going over 120 yards and finding the end zone. And this week, a great matchup versus the Chicago Bears, a defense that really can't stop anyone. And going back a few weeks ago, both these teams had a shootout. So once again, Sam Laporta moving up the rankings weekly, I think has a great ball game. For George Kittle, the San Francisco 49ers, so George Kittle, it's been a solid season for him. Early in the year, not much was going for George Kittle. And even this Niner team, they got off to a 5-0 start, then 5-3 where no one was really doing anything. And now the last few weeks, Kittle and this offense is taking off and putting up huge points. So this week in a matchup versus Seattle Seahawks that have had trouble with the tight end all season. And we even saw last week Jake Ferguson with a nice play in the end zone, snatching a football for a touchdown away on Jamal Adams. I think Kittle has a great track record for Seattle, a team obviously he's familiar with throughout his career, playing in the division and 2 times a season. Once again, has a nice game this week, and it wouldn't be surprising to me if he could be the top scorer this week as well at the position. Number 5, Dalton Kincaid of the Buffalo Bills. So this season, a lot of tight ends breaking out poured at the rookie season. We've seen it with Kincaid the last 5-6 weeks of the season. And Kincaid's a tight end that can make plays and work the middle of the field. He's the number 2 option right now in this Buffalo Bill offense. Right now, Kansas City, I know their defense has played well for the most part this season, but Dalton Kincaid with coverage rolled to Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, who's the deep ball threat, even though he's been hit or miss this season. The middle of the field's been open. He's been a matchup problem for safeties and linebackers, and he was the 26th pick overall. So in a game, I believe, where it's going to be a shootout and a lot of scoring, I got Kincaid at 5. Number 6, Jake Ferguson of the Dallas Cowboys. So Jake Ferguson's still the number 2 target, in my opinion, in the passing game for this Cowboy team. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb, the number 1 guy, one of the best receivers in the league after a breakout year this year. Brandon Cooks definitely getting integrated and making more plays over the last few weeks. But Ferguson, middle of the field, making plays, taking big hits, getting back up. And Dak Prescott's always like the tight end. Going back to his earlier years with Jason Witten, Dalton Schultz over the last few seasons, he got him paid, was Prescott, with Schultz having 2 great years in a row. And now Jake Ferguson, possibly the next big tight end for this Cowboy team. So this week in a matchup versus Philly, where he had success early in the year, I think Ferguson once again goes out there and has a good game. 7, Dallas Goedert of the Philadelphia Eagles staying in the same game. So Goedert, a few weeks ago, broke the forearm versus Cowboy team. And you know Goedert, he wants to come back and he wants to stick it to the Cowboys after getting injured and have a big game. So this week I expect Goedert back in the starting lineup. He's a tight end that creates mismatches, and he'll open this offense up even more for this Philadelphia Eagle team, where right now more coverage is rolled Brown's way, but now with Goedert coming back, the middle of the field, he's going to work. He's a problem for linebackers and safeties as well. And this Cowboy team, their defense is a little bit leaky in coverage with solid tight ends this season. So Goedert right back in the mix. I think has a good game. Number 8, Evan Ingram of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Evan Ingram, one of the best games of the season for him on Monday Night Football versus Cincinnati Bengals, scoring his first touchdown of the year and just making plays all over the field. But right now, Trevor Lawrence, he's going to miss multiple weeks. But luckily, it's not an out for the season type of injury with his ankle injury. So now C.J. Beathard is going to be the starting quarterback. And to be honest, I don't think it's really going to make a huge difference for Evan Ingram. He's going to be a security blanket. Obviously, backup quarterbacks and young quarterbacks usually rely on the tight end in tough situations or on big third down plays in short yardage. So this week, a tougher matchup, no doubt about it, at the Cleveland Browns, one of the better defenses in the league. But I think Evan Ingram is a versatile tight end that lines up everywhere on the field. Even with the backup quarterback, still could be a solid tight end remainder of the way. Number 9, Dalton Schultz of the Houston Texans. So Dalton Schultz, he's had a solid season with the Houston Texans. I know the first 3-4 weeks of the year he got off to a slow start, and many people thought, including me, that he's a product of the Cowboy system. But now he's gone out there, he's making plays as Dalton Schultz. He's been a big red zone threat. And now with Tank Dell out for the season, I think more targets are going to come Schultz's way. The only thing, obviously, he missed last week's ball game with a hamstring injury. So if Schultz could get healthy and back on the field, where this Texan team definitely could use him at a tough New York Jet defense, I think he's going to get the more targets, like I mentioned. And he's always a red zone and touchdown threat. Number 10, Taysom Hill of the New Orleans Saints. So we got to see what the deal is with Derek Carr, if he's going to play in this game or not, or if it's Jameis Winston. But it doesn't matter realistically. Taysom Hill's still getting goal line packages. He's still catching the football a couple times a game as well, and even a few pass attempts as well. But obviously, if Derek Carr's out, his upside is better than with Carr in the lineup for Taysom Hill, with Jameis Winston then starting the quarterback. So this week versus Carolina defense that hasn't stopped anyone all season, 1-11 on the year, and another home game for New Orleans in a game that they need. I think Taysom Hill has a nice performance once again. Number 11, David Njoku of the Cleveland Browns. Njoku, he didn't have a good game at all last week, only 2 catches in that game at the Los Angeles Rams. But Joe Flacco, he actually moved the football down the field. He's got a good arm still with Joe Flacco at 38 years old. And I know he was targeting Elijah Moore early and often and a lot in that game. But if Amari Cooper can't go, even though I think he will, even coming off the possible concussion, David Njoku is still a playmaker in the middle of the field. He's still a tight end that's a matchup problem and has lightning speed. And this week versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team where their defense just got shredded by the Bengals offense and a backup quarterback, I think David Njoku could have a decent game once again. 12, Cole Kmet of the Chicago Bears. So Cole Kmet, he's been a solid tight end for the last season and change. And Justin Fields and him have a great rapport. Fields has been back now over the last few weeks. And this week in a potential shootout, once again, like we saw a few weeks ago between these teams with the Lions and the Chicago Bears, I think Cole Kmet could find openings in the middle of the field. Usually he's a tight end that's good for 7-8 fantasy points minimum, but it wouldn't be surprising if he did find the end zone in this game. Number 13, Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons. So Kyle Pitts, it hasn't been that good of a year. Desmond Ridder, one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, but he does target the tight ends. And last week, Pitts actually did have 9.10 fantasy points in PPR leagues. So Jonnu Smith, the last few weeks, really hasn't done much. Pruitt, the other tight end, did score a touchdown for this Atlanta Falcon team in a tougher matchup with the Jets. But this week back home is Atlanta, and Pitts usually has been better at home than he's been on the road. And this Tampa defense really isn't all that great. So I think Pitts can make a few plays, but what's been holding them back all season is just the run-first offense he's in. And with the quarterback he's playing in Desmond Ridder, who's not a consistent or good quarterback pretty much at all. 14, Isaiah Likely of the Baltimore Ravens. So Isaiah Likely, he's a playmaking tight end. Mark Andrews out for the season. And Likely in his first start of the year a couple weeks ago, 4 catches, 40 yards in that one at the Los Angeles Chargers. So now coming off the bye week, and like I say all the time, younger players and rookie players, they get more into the playbook. They get more playing time. And I think Isaiah Likely, with the experience last season as well, when Andrews was out for a little bit, made some plays and was a decent option. So this week, in a pretty beatable matchup versus the Los Angeles Rams, I think he could find holes in the middle of the field and be a solid option. And the 15th and final tight end on rankings, Gerald Everett of Los Angeles Chargers. So Gerald Everett, number 2 option in this passing game over the last month of the season, where pretty much there's not much going on behind Keenan Allen in the passing game. Quentin Johnson, he can't catch the ball at all. Joshua Palmer, he's been out, possibly returning in this game. And Chandler Guyton hasn't stayed on the field and pretty much has been a deep ball threat and not. So Everett's work in the middle of the field. He's had a few touchdowns over the last month of the season as well. And him and Herbert have a good rapport. Even going back to last season, Everett carved out a decent role. So this week in a pretty decent matchup versus the Denver Broncos, where they've had trouble all season against tight ends. I think Everett once again has a decent performance. That's the top 15 tight ends I'm ranking for Week 14 of the fantasy football season.